Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Feathr webinar. I'm joined by Mike Ross from ASAE. So really excited to have Mike on today. We're going to give everyone just a couple of minutes to join. So if you want to go ahead and drop where you're joining from and what org you're coming from, go ahead and drop that in the chat so we can get the chat going.
Yeah, thanks for everyone who signed up and is here, and looking forward to a great conversation. And always excited to hear what's going on in the industry, and especially with all the events coming up. So it's a great opportunity to have this discussion. So very excited and appreciate y'all coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. And ASAE annual is coming up, so I'm sure a lot of the people in the room are registered, have seen, promo for it. So we're here to kind of put, put that into context today, show a little bit about the strategy behind that. So if you've been seeing the ads, getting the emails, if you've registered, if you're thinking about it, we're going to kind of show you what's happening behind the scenes and how you can do the same thing if you have an event coming up. So that is the goal of today. All right, we've got lots of orgs in here. Cool. Welcome, everybody. Let's see here. Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome, Taylor. I'm in Gainesville. Where are you located, actually, Mike? Are you in DC or
Yeah, well, I'm
Canada?
a
Okay.
sometimes a traveling suitcase, but I'm
Yeah.
actually down in South Florida. I was in Gainesville, Florida, funny enough, for went to University of Florida, so I was there for over almost a decade in Gainesville, but now I'm down in just kind of north of Fort Lauderdale area.
Okay, cool.
But DC frequent. Yeah,
Yeah, I
my
figured.
second zip code.
Association Haven. Yeah, I didn't know you were in Gainesville. We somehow have never talked about that. Went to
Yeah,
University of
graduate.
Law.
Yeah, but we probably even crossed paths at some point.
Probably.
Small.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Cool. We've got lots and lots of people in the audience today, so this is excited. Go Gators. Hey, Britt. Cool. All right. I think we can go ahead and get started. I'm seeing a few people still trickling in. Um, nice. Welcome, Sarah. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. So for anyone who has just joined, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking all about ASAE Annual. I'm joined by the wonderful Mike Ross, who is going to share a wealth of knowledge about event marketing for associations, the kind of behind the scenes of strategies that really work for getting in front of members, non-members, younger generations, all of that. So we'll be talking about the event specifically and kind of what's happening behind the scenes with ASAE Annual. And then we'll also be talking about the sort of digital marketing playbook that you can apply to not only events, but also to membership drives, to actually your sponsorship packages, to offer retargeting and other advertising options to sponsors so you can get a little bit more of the non-dues revenue coming in, and take advantage of all of that website data that you can get when you are properly tracking everything and have the right tools in place. So, cool. All right, I'm going to get started. So, I'm Isa Hasty. I'm the Senior Manager of Content and Marketing Communications here at Feathr. I host a lot of our webinars. So, yeah, probably have seen some of you before on here. And then for anyone who is new to Feathr, a lot of what we're going to be covering today is actually how ASAE uses Feathr to promote the annual conference, right? So you're going to get a very practical look into what Feathr can actually do for your organization. But if you are new to Feathr, we're a digital advertising and marketing platform built specifically for associations. So if you're looking to grow your events, stay more top of mind with members, get in front of younger potential members, right? If you want to show up on college campuses, on high school campuses, get in front of the next generation of members and attendees. Feathr can help you do all of that. We can help you level up your sponsorship packages. So lots that you can do in the platform, and you'll get to see a lot of that kind of play out today in the campaigns that we're going to show you. And I'll give you a chance at the very end to sign up for a more personalized walkthrough if you'd like to kind of see how Feathr could work for your specific organization. And then I will pass it off to you, Mike, to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your role, and then we'll kind of head into talking about ASAE Annual.
Yeah, thanks, Isa. Well, again, thanks so much for everyone who came out today, and for the folks who aren't here who registered, and hopefully you watch the recording when you're seeing this. But yeah, been with ASAE. Next month will actually be 2 years as a senior director of sales over there. Prior to that, actually was on the for-profit private equity side within the association space for nearly 13 years. So don't want to age myself, but almost over 15 years now in the association space and over my whole professional career. So at the moment, I'm overseeing all of our media advertising, a la carte sponsorships, working across our functional departments, whether it be marketing, registration efforts, events, partnerships, our digital advertising. So it all works together and it all has to be a cohesive ecosystem for it all to have that sort of enterprise approach when we're looking at sponsorship. So again, this is just an opportunity here today to kind of have another tool in the toolkit. A lot of these, who on here were at associations are doing probably a lot of these different things. So if you can get one or two things out of today's out of today's session, that would be great from my perspective. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, no, the goal is definitely to kind of present a few different things that you can do. Some of them are easy, free, super accessible things you could do tomorrow. Some of them require having tools in place that are pretty easy to implement, but kind of a little bit more of the sort of digital tech side of things, right? So I wanted to just include this QR code. So if anyone in the audience is interested in attending ASAE Annual and you have not registered yet, go ahead and scan the QR code and open that in your phone if you want to register later. But I think this is actually a really cool little experiment. So if you scan this and then you open it up in your phone, right, you have the tab open and then maybe you don't register, you will start to see ads following you around, encouraging you to come back. So that's largely what we're going to be talking about today is how can you stay in front of people who've shown interest in your event or whatever it is that you're offering, but haven't converted, right? How do you actually get them to come back and take that action? So I want you to register for the event. Obviously, if you're interested in going, go ahead and hit the QR code and register for sure. But also, this is a really cool way to just kind of see it play out in real life because you will start to see the ads following you around because of the campaigns that ASE has set up in the background. So um, cool. Okay, so when we're thinking about association events, right, conferences, annual meetings, there's a lot of challenges that come up, right? A lot of sort of the same problems that you see again and again when you're running the same event marketing plan that you've run for years. And I think it can be difficult sometimes to know where to begin, how to change your approach to sort of, have the right tools in place and really get in front of people more effectively. And sometimes it's just a matter of trying a few new campaigns, getting a few new things in action. So we're going to talk about that today. These slides will be shared. You'll be getting the deck and the recording after the webinar today. So I'm going to do my best to actually send that out this afternoon. So be on the lookout for that in your inbox. So just a few different things that kind of happen, right? If you are running a more typical event marketing plan for your association's event, you might be used to just running a few different emails, right? You're announcing it. Maybe you have an early bird email that you send out, some sort of last chance reminders, and then that's it. So what are you doing on top of email? Email alone cannot be the only channel where you're reaching people, right? You might be doing some organic social, but there's a lot more that you can be doing. People are reaching your registration page, right? And a lot of them are leaving. Most people will leave without converting. And so you want to make sure that you have a way to follow up, bring people back, and actually get them to take that action. Again, this could be an event registration, or it could be renewing their membership, joining for the first time, registering even for a webinar or a course or a certification, right? A lot of the time, messaging is too generic. And so the value prop isn't specific enough to each person's interests. And so there's just not a compelling enough reason to ask for the budget, to ask for the time off, things like that. And then promotion often starts too late. You might think you're doing it early enough, and then you're scrambling at the end. So these are just some of the problems that come up when you're not really, doing everything that you can be doing. And so when you have the right toolkit, you can really do a lot more than this and kind of prevent some of these problems. So Mike, I would love for you to kind of talk about what ASA annual promotion looked like in previous years, how some of these problems came into play for you guys, and kind of what led you to find solutions to some of these problems.
Yeah, and it's a very that's a very loaded and open-ended question, so I appreciate that. But on all seriousness, I mean, it's one of those kind of what it's you painted the picture earlier. I'm assuming a lot of associations they have a great email plan in place where they're using their lists that they have to utilize those different, whether it be their executive lists or if they're in the trades, their suppliers versus their if you're in the water and wastewater industry, your utilities audience that has to show up for certain, whether it be ongoing education and certifications that they need to stay on the job. So you always have that core base that's going to be there regardless, but sort of on the peripheral, how do you get a strategy around those companies? So, and again, even a lot of people when they get there, they're not ready to purchase at that time, whether it be getting approval and things to that extent. So overall, I think their ASAE has done a great job over the years in terms of like finding the right tools to add to the resources to be more efficient and to kind of work on that conversion rate over time and keep it top of mind. Because again, there's so many opportunities out there to we are kind of living in a microwave society now where there's always a new opportunity to kind of get distracted from what's the plan. So with again, from where we started, from where we are now, I mean, it's full encompassing, whether it be our email campaigns, paid social media, working with other associations that have similar members and core audiences that we can help maybe do trade outs together to help with audience promotion, organic social working on with demand generation companies versus which is different than lead gen. A lot of people the difference between that there's not an understanding of that. I've noticed that when talking with other associations. So again, there's partners for everything. And again, a lot of times you may not have the support. There's a lot of associations that might have 5 to 10 people on their staff. And it's a bear of a challenge to try to make sure
Yeah.
that they can do all this. So sometimes it means finding the right partners out there and solutions to be able to execute some of that and sort of keep the game plan. The game plan always looks great when you start off the marketing plan, and then all of a sudden you go in and only 60% of it got done because something else came up here and your big annual conference isn't the only event you're putting on. You might have 5, 6 a year that you kind of have to kind of move around. So
Yeah.
I would say the biggest thing is just making sure that that you're not missing any sort of audience specific motivations that other like a retargeting platform campaign with Feathr could help utilize with that or other opportunities out there as well. So I know we'll get into more details on that as we kind of go through.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And like one of the cool things about retargeting and sort of tracking what people are doing on your website and being able to act on that data is that you really get to automate a lot of that and set it up in the background. So, it's like it's not a lot of manual audience building. It's like if people come to your event page and then they look at the speaker page or a specific thing about the event, then you know that about them, right? You know that they're interested in that and you can have campaigns set up in the background that then target those people based on what they looked at with messaging specific to whatever they expressed interest in. And so there's a lot of stuff that you can do to automate this and just kind of have those audiences build dynamically as people are doing things on your website. And then, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of barriers to actually getting approval to go to an event. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail at the end, but never underestimate how many nudges or touch points each person needs. It's like they might actually be really interested. They might even be a member of your organization and kind of need to come or want to come, but maybe they miss a deadline or maybe they can't get the budget approved or they need extra time to do that. And then they kind of forget, they get busy. And so it really is about just showing up and reminding people of the thing that they are interested in doing, right? So never underestimate how many times people need to be reminded to do things that they might actually want to do. Okay, so let's start off by talking about a couple of easy, basically free things that people can do that you found worked this year for ASAE Annual 2026. So can you first talk a little bit about what it looked like to start earlier this year? How early were you starting in past years? How early did you start this year? And what difference did that make in terms of just having that extra runway?
Yeah, and again, because not every year the event's the same time of the year, so you always have to take that into account. It's typically, for example, for us, for example, is in August for our annual meeting, but sometimes it could be in early August or it could be just based on how it falls in the calendar. So that's also something to keep in mind. But for us, I mean, it was about 10 months so ahead. So it's like sort of as soon as the annual meeting closed, we're sort of already working on when LA occurred last year, which was a great event. And then we're already focusing on Indy. And even as we speak now, we're already kind of full speed ahead working to try ideas for rebook for Charlotte next year. So it's sort of there's no really time. That's just in between the other several other two signature events we have, and also bringing back great ideas this year as well. So to that point, it's even more important to be strategic about understanding where you're going to have a lot of information in front of your members and making sure that the longer that runway, the more opportunity that you can get them at the right time or keep them in that funnel and find out what they're looking for based on where they're, to your point earlier, about going to a specific page. Like if they were looking at the CEO content, where you can target that with some of the executive programming that is going to speak to them. So all in all, that data is paramount to kind of having that intentional, strategic oversight with everything that's going on with your campaigns. And you can only do that with technology when strengthening through those practices. But to get to no technology is gonna you can't really get the productivity out of it if you don't have the strategy and the timing for that first. So that's the most important piece. I mean, you can have all the partnerships in the world, but if you don't have the right strategic focus there,
Mhm.
that could sort of be your downfall in the end. So for us, it actually helped us get ahead in terms of to answer the kind of the bigger question uh, staying ahead in like in terms of pacing, like several hundred ahead of throughout the cycle in terms of where we are because of that earlier timing and allowing more people to decide and figure out what's best for them and what's the reason to attend.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, I think it might help to kind of put it in perspective. What are some sort of milestones that you think about when you're thinking about this timeline? If you're like, okay, we want to start 10 months out, what does that actually look like in terms of, the sort of big moments in that timeline that we want to center everything around? What are you starting with? Maybe it's early bird, right? And then sort of how are you thinking about that timeline basically at a higher level?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because it's such a long cycle, you really have the opportunity to create a lot of different segments and campaigns based on that and using historic data to see what sort of moved the needle there and what didn't move the needle at the
Yep.
same time. So to that point, like early bird pricing, that's something that's always been a part of annual meeting, really drive that urgency because there's always those folks that are going to be there regardless every year, or if it's every 2 years because of for their CAE credits and making sure that they stay on top of that. So if they're going to be there, you might as well get the best pricing to be there. So,
Yep.
or just drive urgency. Again, there's also the stragglers who again like and I say that nicely because again there's so like because I respect it. There's a lot going on and there's people
Yeah.
who need to figure out where they're going to be. They may not know where they're going to be in August 18th in 2026 when it's
Yep.
January of 2026. So even if they have their own event, there might be a conflict there. They're traveling. So
Yep.
again, I think for us milestones, it's going to be some of the keynote sessions when those are announced. That's usually a big bump, whether it be, I mean, for us, we have the classing and perform. And if you ever been to annual meeting, like we typically have a great performer there around, and then also just other great receptions that we can promote and other catalyst sessions that we have. So the content being the forefront, but also too, we want to make sure that there's something for everybody there. And again, everybody attends this conference for different reasons, networking, ongoing education, credentials. If you're a supplier, you're going there to generate business and network in that aspect. And those receptions is a great opportunity for them. So all across the board, there's general messaging, but again, it gets very specific to even the specific programs and even like CEO content. For example, we have our CEO summit as well as our CEO series, which is exclusive for executive directors and CEOs. So it's important that they understand what's the value to them to be there and what they can get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like there's almost like three different levels of messaging. There's the sort of what is the overall timeline that we as an organization are thinking about. There's early bird, there's, speaker announcements, there's last chance, there's that, right? And then you're kind of thinking about the different people that would come to your event, the different reasons that people have, some sort of like personas almost, which we're going to get into a few examples of that in a few minutes. But you have the executive types, you have your members, your non-members, maybe younger people that you're trying to get to come to your event for the first time. And so those are different sort of personas that have different reasons for coming. And so you want to have messaging tailored to that. And then the last layer is kind of the individual journey that each single person has with you, right? And so you might have somebody who is really on top of things. They see the early bird announcement, they see a couple of ads, and then they register right away. You might have somebody who might be in any of those categories. They're a member, non-member, whatever, but they have a different approach to engaging with your comms and registering. So they might register a lot closer because there's like some urgency around the advertising. So there's a lot of different layers to what you need to do when it comes to your messaging, how you're creating messaging, all of the different iterations of that, and then how you're setting up the automations in the background so that people are going to see the most relevant thing for them, right? So it's not just, oh, we have early bird pricing, we're going to put that out there. The people who want it are going to sort of self-opt into it, and then everyone else will catch them later. It's just not that way anymore. And so you have to have all of these ways, all of these layers, right, to the messaging and the timing of all of this. So and I know that when we chatted, Mike, you mentioned a few of these things were just kind of great outcomes of starting earlier. So you just have more runway, more flexibility from the moment you start promo until the event. So you can actually kind of switch things up, right? Move budget around. If you have a campaign, an ad campaign that's performing really, really well, you can add more budget to that. You can kind of take budget away if something's not working. And so it just gives you a little bit more of that visibility as you're moving through the campaign. Through the event promo to make changes in real time and kind of get the most out of things, right? And adjust on the fly. So I thought that that was a great insight and just kind of that in itself feels like a reason to start earlier, start as early as possible, right? Just to give yourself more time to bring in new data, see how things are working, see who's engaging with what, and act on that over a longer period. Okay. So, this is sort of the second free tip, right? So, you want to start things as early as possible, and then don't just run things for a longer period, but make sure that you're keeping your messaging fresh. So, banner blindness is a real thing. And so, you don't want to be sending people the same emails or serving the same ads all the time. You want to mix up the messaging, the reason for registering things like that. So, we included a couple of just examples of ads from two different campaigns. So if you want to talk just quickly at a high level about these two campaigns, kind of what the goal was for each and the difference between the conversions that you saw for each one.
Yeah, no, and again, just kind of taking a step back in terms of just for an understanding. So, for example, when these campaigns are set up, you have your own dashboard on the back end where you can even get feedback as these are running. Like, for example, if you invest a certain amount of dollars or whatever impressions you want to generate, let's just say you want 100,000 impressions on, let's just say this creative you see right here in the example. Like over time, it'll give you based on sort of the audience, like are you getting, because again, it also has to be based on your audience. Like if it's a larger scale association or maybe the numbers may be a little bit different in terms of the conversion or just even if it's something more niche, if it's a specific vertical that you're approaching there, but it'll give you an idea just to kind of take it a step back from that standpoint. But going back to these campaigns, again, these are for the early bird, for example, like if you're looking at that versus the more general messaging with sort of just kind of similar branding around sort of the themes and the branding guidelines there. Obviously, you want to always have a lower dollar per conversion. When it comes to that, you can kind of take a look at that data and see if, hey, do we need to change out the messaging? Like, do we need to change out maybe some of the copy? Do we need to also, from the strategy standpoint, maybe that's something that's not a selling point that we thought it was. Like, again, I'm not using these two examples as maybe that case, but it allows you, especially going back to the point about starting early, it gives you more time to be flexible and changing things out on the go and getting that feedback and working with an account manager for example, at a Feathr or any organization you're working with on sort of these types of audience extension campaigns that can help you supplement what you're doing. Again, this isn't a replacement for all your marketing. You still want to do your email, your social media, your partnerships with other groups and associations that you work with. If you're doing direct mail, I know I used to work with as a consultant with a lot of like in the seed industry or with farmer associations and agriculture, and direct mail works well. I will tell you that a lot of business generated with that type of marketing. So you have to know your audience, but from a standpoint of having data and be able to have data that you can act on, like these types of, if you're tracking the conversions and even over time, you'll have more, be able to compare scale on what's worked in the past. And if you've done an early bird and the conversion has, now it's $50 to get a conversion, like you just maybe kind of have to take a step back and say, why is that? Like, is there a trend or people signing up later? But having that longer cycle, you can kind of have that ability to analyze that a little bit better. as you're kind of looking through your dashboard. And again, like just especially as you're getting towards the end with urgency and deadlines, like this will allow you to kind of understand earlier maybe where you might need to, or maybe you might be ahead of the game. Like if you're ahead of where you were kind of 7, 8 weeks out, there's less stress there. You've already hit your goal. But again, but also too, you won't be surprised and you'll have more data to compare. And like, I don't know, for me, if I'm going to invest any type of investment dollars into partnerships and trying to help grow or generate, whether it be registrations, advertising revenue, or help for our partners. I want to make sure that conversion's there when I actually have a realistic, tangible number I can look at. So this allows you to do that.
Yeah, and in Feather, for each ad campaign you're running, you'll see, performance metrics, and it'll even tell you, it'll kind of like have an alert if you have a really high performing campaign, kind of telling you to add more budget if you have budget to add. So if you have a very efficient campaign that has, a low cost per acquisition and it's converting at a high rate, you can add budget while it's running and just kind of get more out of that. So yeah, and then I know that, you've mentioned that you do direct mail for executive members, right? Do you do a little bit of direct mail for some people, or do you kind of, I know you said you don't do it for your broad audience because it's expensive and you can get more out of sort of these types of tools where you're just getting a lot more data quickly,
Yeah.
and it's obviously more cost effective. But do you do any direct mail for um, executives? Yeah.
It was more prevalent prior to COVID because a lot of that it was impacted with off like again a lot of people whether going to the office or again just but again I did get I mean our team does a great job and I just want to first say like in terms of these campaigns and kind of with our event marketing team they do an amazing job of kind of taking that feedback from Feather and on the go and kind of around the branding for each event so you can kind of see an example here. But to that point, I did kind of like just get some feedback on just in terms of direct mail. Like it was successful. Like you put a QR code on there, there's some break there. So again, back to the point, just another tool in the toolkit. But from a direct mail standpoint, it was very prevalent with our CEO, executive director,
Mhm.
executive office, those types of attendees that again, you want to get them wherever you can. And
Yep.
also too for even for early bird or last chance. So that was successful. Again, just a lot of the strategy and now with kind of picking up some of that and complementing more towards digital and having that analytics. Like I think there's a balance there for sure that you can
For
still.
sure. Yeah. And if you're seeing returns from, continuing with direct mail for a certain group in your audience, then keep doing that if it's working for you, but it doesn't mean you have to do it for everybody. So I think finding ways to really tailor the messaging and the channels that you're using for each segment based on what's actually performing well and where people are actually converting. And that's where having data like this matters, making sure that you're using QR codes with tracking links on any mail, print mail pieces that you're sending out. You can track all of that in a platform like Feather and kind of see how that's performing alongside all of your other campaigns. So whatever you're doing, make sure you're tracking it, whatever that looks like. There's a couple questions in the chat. So Ashley asked, what's the typical attendance of ASAE's annual meeting?
Yeah, so I mean, in the past, it's been around, that 5,500 number. Like if you was going to give you an average around that 5,500, it's been especially because again there was an annual meeting in person in 2020 of course and 2021 so kind of from a post sort of the pandemic numbers so around that 5 to 6,000 number.
Yep. And then Megan asked, how much detail do you have when you open like presenters, session names? So I guess what she's asking is like when you're first starting off with sort of general messaging, how much are you leaning into details versus maybe waiting until later on to kind of slowly tease things? I assume that's what you meant, Megan, right?
Yeah, that's a great
So yeah,
question. Yeah, a lot of that's not even available to be honest with you, because we're
true.
working like on the fly. And also too, even if we did have it to that point, you do want to be creative with when you announce things, like if it's a performer, or if it's a big keynote that you want to announce, like sort of have that kind of keep that in the holster,
Hmm.
for sure. So no, that's a great question. I think if you do have a longer cycle, though, that's when you can actually do that. If you have a 2, 3 month cycle, I don't know how much you can actually do that and hold things back. That's why I think getting as early as possible. It's not always manageable. I understand that. Like
Yeah.
every organization is different in what their bandwidth and also what other events they have going on.
Yeah.
But the longer you have, the more you can do that. And you can be more generalized in your messaging, especially if it's an event that's like a long-standing event. Like if you're adding a new event, like I would suggest not holding back stuff in terms of getting people aware of what a brand new event that you're trying to get them to come to add to maybe the two other events they're investing their time, travel budget for. But if you can, I would say that's a great because then you can actually see what the bump was when
Hmm.
that promotion go out.
True. Yeah, and ads are a great way to A/B test things just because it's such a small space to test out language and creatives. And so I think like ad campaigns can go a long way, especially in the beginning with testing out messaging and kind of seeing, what's resonating and what's not. So at a glance, kind of just to sort of set some context, this is what, any given campaign looks like for promoting an event or for, driving membership, right? You're going to be on the awareness side, trying to get in front of the right people, nurture intent. This is where all those touch points come in, continuing to show up. If they come to your website and leave, you want to bring them back. Confirm intent. So just getting people as close to that conversion point as you can, and then driving the conversion. So in this case, registrations, but that could be a membership renewal, course registration, things like that. So I think that, yeah, that is just sort of the overall bird's eye view of the marketing funnel, right? And so now let's talk about retargeting. So basically, you kind of said this the other day when we chatted. If you're not retargeting, you're leaving revenue on the table, right? This is a missed opportunity if you're not doing it because people are showing you their intent by visiting your website, navigating to certain pages, right? They're showing you exactly what they want, and you don't have access to that unless you're tracking that website activity and have access to that data. And then you can act on it by showing, messaging that is relevant to whatever they were doing on your website. So with retargeting, what we're talking about here is basically, you look at a pair of shoes online, you don't buy them, and then you get followed around with ads for those shoes. And in a lot of cases, you might go back and buy them, right? So it's that basic concept, and we're applying that for associations to get in front of members, attendees, prospects, right? Online as they're scrolling on social media, as they're browsing websites online. So this is something that you can do. A lot of you might already be doing this. If so, great, right? If you have tracking pixels on your website and you're retargeting people based on activity, wonderful. You can always get more segmented probably in how you're doing that. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But let's go ahead and yeah, look at this. So this is obviously, the ASAE annual registration page. So if you want to just think about it as there's this sort of little tag or invisible pixel on the back end of this page, and this applies to any pages where you want somebody to convert in some way. So your membership page as well, you can have the pixel on the back end, and then that means that if somebody comes to that page, doesn't actually fill out the form and do what you want them to do, then you can follow them with ads. And if you have their emails, you can set up more, complex campaigns where you're serving ads and sending emails, and those kind of feed into each other and create more of like a multi-channel effect where they're seeing you everywhere, right? And people aren't always opening their emails. And so if they miss an email from you, you still have a chance to show up on Facebook or while they're browsing for recipes and things like that, right? With these digital ads. So Mike, can you talk a little bit about what actually goes into setting up that pixel? Like how long does it actually take to get that installed, what the process looked like for you?
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things where you the all when it's very simplified when it comes to when you're working with especially with a partner on this because again you can do audience extension maybe through Google or on your own or just through other avenues but it's in terms of getting everything in this like a dashboard set up for us it's sort of you get service that aspect well so it's very hands off from for example on the association side like getting set up so if anything it's just you sort of get the pixel from which then your IT or your web developer just has it put on the back end it's typically a simple line of code that just gets implemented and once it's there you can remove it you can adjust it you can put it on specific pages that you want to your event page and even your normal website if you have a different domain for different maybe your foundation or your mission driven pages. So again, there's a lot of ways you can go with it, but again, it's a little bit different than website advertising because again, if you are an association who doesn't like to have web ads on your website, which again, that's or a lot of them, you just have like maybe a leaderboard on there, typical IEB standard size, like on the bottom, and you have three or four rotations. and you just want to be able to maybe have a way to generate even for your advertising audience so they can use your data to get impressions. Again, it goes not just for registrations. And I think towards the end, there's a little bit of there's a
Yeah.
piece on the your industry partners or your more of your supplier members, how they can even you can help be a revenue. It could be a revenue stream for your association.
Yeah.
But for the most part, once it's there and it's set up, it's you just kind of go from there, and that's when the strategic standpoint gets in and like what you actually want to promote, what type of artwork do you want to go. So to the example before, they come to your website, they're going to go pay their American Express credit card bill. All of a sudden, annual meeting ads is coming up in the if they don't have ad blocker on. I know there's some ways you might
Yeah.
not get it, but for the most part, like it's still there's usually a high percentage of people who will see that ad when they go to another website. And again, it's just keeping that top of mind. I mean, McDonald's, everyone knows what McDonald's is, yet they still advertise millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars because again, it's just that top of mind and just kind of there's so much going on and you want to make sure that you're staying in front of there. So with here, it's just again, I would just say from protecting your market share, and they'll go somewhere else potentially because there was another opportunity that maybe they had that continued kind of exposure in different mediums there. So again, it's just helps distinguish broad traffic from just that higher intent registration behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tiffany, this is all happening in Feather. So all of these campaigns that we're showing, the ad campaigns, the pixel that you can install on these conversion pages, you can do all of this through Feather. So that's the focus. That's the platform that ASAE is using for all of this. So like Mike said, you can run some of this natively in Google or other platforms, but Feather makes it really easy to do all in one place. So um, there's a couple other questions. I'm going to come back to those in just a couple of minutes. I want to just push through a few more slides here. So this is just, again, kind of a visual example of what this can look like. So somebody might see an ad for ASAE annual. Again, some of you might have seen some of these, right? So you see an ad, you click on it, you come to the website, but you leave without registering on that reg page, right? And then you will see because of that, right? The website tracks that. And then ASAE has a campaign set up. Okay, if they come to this page, don't register. We want to show them more ads. And so this would be maybe an example of an ad that you would then see along with some other ones, maybe an email, ultimately coming back and registering. So I think the McDonald's example is great. Like for-profit companies are investing in digital advertising because it works, right? Even if it's a McDonald's or, a Walmart of the world, they know that showing up and just reminding people, nudging people is going to have an impact on decision making. And so when you think about your event and your audience, it is a relatively warm audience, right? These are people who are in your industry. They may have come to your event in the past. They might be a member. They might have heard about you through a peer, but that's a relatively warm audience compared to a lot of other audiences out there where maybe you're trying to, sell something or get somebody to make a donation to a cause that they don't know about yet, right? But when you're talking about an association's audience, you're talking about people who have some real vested interest in engaging with you. And so what you really have to do is just present that reason front and center in a compelling way and just again and again and again show up until they make the decision. And maybe they make the decision, but then they don't take action yet. So you have to close that gap by continuing to stay top of mind. And that's what digital ads and retargeting can help you do. Um, okay, so um, Jen, so basically, yeah, this is happening all in the back end. So you basically just set up a tracking pixel. It's just a little snippet of code that you can put on the back end of any page where you have a form or some kind of conversion action, right? So this could be a registration page, membership page. You can also do this on pages that don't have any kind of conversion. So if you want to see who's visiting my homepage, right, and just interested in generally learning about us, who's visiting the About Us page, maybe you have a specific program or something coming up and you want to know who's interested in what. And this is tracked in a platform like Feather, and this is all anonymous, right? So it's privacy safe, it's anonymized data until somebody gives you their email or opts in some way. So this would be like subscribing to your newsletter, signing up for an event, something like that. And once they give you the email, then that email is associated with that anonymous user and it's de-anonymized, right? So all of this is privacy safe as long as people are coming to your website and not actually opting in. So you just kind of see anonymous users who've done things, but you can automatically continue to reach them on their devices when you have these campaigns set up. And it's great, obviously, once you have their email. And in some cases, you might, be promoting an event and you have people visiting your website whose emails you already have because they are members or because they attended an event in the past. And so that's great because then you can hit them with the retargeting ads and emails, right? So you can say, hey, you just visited our page, come back and register, and you can do that in the inbox and as they're browsing online. So um, and yes, this is something that you can do in all Feather tiers, Casey. So retargeting is kind of our bread and butter. The website tracking and retargeting is sort of the bread and butter of Feather, because the website tracking is really what gives you the data that you need in order to better understand your audience, make decisions, set up these campaigns, right? Really know what people are doing and then act on that. So yes, you can do that at any price point with Feather. Okay, so these are some headline numbers from you ran 15 Feather camp or you're running have run 15 Feather campaigns for ASAE annual, which is coming up in mid-August. So a lot of these campaigns have ended, some are ongoing. But I wanted to just highlight some of these numbers at a glance and sort of have you explain the big picture of what this is, and then we'll delve into comparing sort of a more top of funnel with a more targeted campaign on the next slide. So anything you want to add about these numbers to kind of color it in?
No, I would say overall, just shows sort of again, as you could see, this isn't the entire conversions. This isn't all of our registrants, but I will say from a standpoint of from a just an overall touch point, it's about 15% of our registered attendees at this moment were in at one point of one of these campaigns, which is a to me that's a pretty significant number, and it shows that these results are connecting campaigns, and there's measurable business outcomes as well in terms of the strategy in place for this. So again, it's always great you can put numbers to a strategy and see what was the outcome out of that when you're looking at your investment, obviously your overall portfolio of how you're marketing for your different events. It doesn't have to be events too, like just take a step back. It could be your membership. You could be promoting your certifications. This obviously is in regards to annual meeting, but you can promote anything in terms of as long as you have what the strategy around who you're trying to target and what's the initiative in terms of the final outcome there. So, and again, the last point is just the attribution, that number, that's just they were as part again, that might not have been the final touch point, but at some point they were within that funnel as part of this retargeting campaign. So to me, that's a pretty significant point there, and also the emphasis on why we continue to add more campaigns and from a strategy standpoint, make that a big part of our focus each year.
Yeah. And like you said, it's great to have these numbers to back up the investment. And we'll talk at the end about that non-dues revenue you can create to add an additional revenue stream through a platform like Feather. And that can easily pay for the platform and then some, right? And so there's ways that you can use Feather not only to get in front of your audience and promote your event, but also to drive some non-dues revenue through sponsorships and just add to the ROI from the platform that way. So yeah, just some high level stats again on this general messaging campaign versus registration dropout. And so as you can see, these stats are more, these metrics are more about views, opens, impressions, clicks, right? So these are going to be the things that matter. You're not going to see high conversion rates on general messaging campaigns, awareness campaigns. The point of that is just to spread awareness, to get on people's radar, to kind of educate and inform. And then a campaign like this, which is registration dropout, which again means that somebody actually visited your registration page, in some cases multiple times, and left for some reason without registering. The intent there is obviously much higher than somebody who's in this general net, right? And so you're going to see a much lower cost per conversion on a campaign like registration dropout than what you would see overall across all of the campaigns, right? So the average across all of the campaigns, which included those sort of top of funnel, was $20 per conversion. And then a more high intent targeted campaign, you're going to see that drop. And same with value per $1 spent, right? You're going to see a $98 return on every dollar versus more of a 60 closer to 60, right? For all of the campaigns in aggregate. So I think that this is helpful just to think about, what metrics should I be looking at for top of funnel awareness campaigns? Don't get distraught if you're not seeing conversions happening from campaigns like that, because that's simply not the point. You're trying to drive people through the funnel, nurture, and then get them to convert. And so you're going to see the conversion numbers on campaigns like this. And so it's really just kind of thinking about entirely different metrics from campaign to campaign based on what the audience is doing and what you want them to do, what they've done before to show intent, right? Um, yeah, anything you want to add here, Mike, as well?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. I was just going to say at the end of the day that the audience quality and behavior can sometimes just matter more than like the raw reach of trying to, the kind of just put the net out there. I mean, I think there's a
Yeah,
place for that with your email list and all that. But again, when it comes to if you're investing a certain amount for a campaign, or again, you want general messaging to get out to everybody, but as you get kind of through that funnel or towards, let's just say you're 3 months out, maybe you want to fine tune a little bit and kind of understand where your conversions are going to be coming from, whether it be past attendees,
yeah,
your core executive audience, or your suppliers, and kind of even from an exhibit sponsorship standpoint, just again, just really focus on what's going to drive the most action versus that general messaging, which is probably more appropriate towards the beginning of your marketing strategy.
absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these layers of messaging that we kind of talked about earlier. And so you have the sort of general flow, right? Which is how are we thinking about our event? How are we thinking about the different milestones that we want to promote, early bird announcements, where are we showing up, social media, paid and organic, all of that. And then the individual retargeting piece is going to really solve for what is each individual person, what is their experience with us, right? When did they first hear about the event? Are they actually interested up front, or does it take a little bit longer to get them to make the decision to come, right? So all of those different things that happen on that personal individual level, you want to account for that as well. And that's where that behavior tracking and behavior-based messaging comes into play. So let's talk about some of these sort of personas. So obviously, this is all one big event marketing campaign that you ran with different sort of ad campaigns and emails within it. But you can really account for a lot of different personality types, behavior, decision-making styles, things like that in one campaign when you have the right automation set up. And so you can do this in a platform like Feathr because you're really tracking what every single person is doing and then following up with them individually based on what they did. So we have the planner, the straggler, the executive. So you can kind of self-opt, self-select into these, self-identify. No shame here. So there's some people who are going to be very aware of whatever events they want to attend that year. They're going to be looking out for announcements and they might register early or at least be, really paying attention to the different comms that are happening early on. You might have somebody who the event isn't top of mind and they might register pretty close to the end because they see an ad that's saying last chance or driving urgency, right? Or an email or whatever that looks like. And then executives, I know that you guys have a specific sort of track of communications for executive members. And so this can look different than whatever you're doing for this sort of more general group of people. And so yeah, this is kind of a look. You might have a lot more touch points with a sort of methodical type of person because they're going to be paying more attention. They're going to be clicking more actively early on compared with somebody who's less engaged and they are going to register, but it's just going to be at the very end because they see an email and they say, oh my gosh, they visit the page, they leave, and then they start getting these ads. And it's like, this is your last chance. The event window is closing, register now, right? And so they might make a lot of those decisions really quickly at the very end, right, leading right up to the event, versus somebody like this who sees that save the date early on. They read the agenda. They're maybe not in a rush, so they might not register immediately, but they kind of are very aware of what's happening, and so they're going to engage with you more. And that's why it just is important to start early and also be showing up multiple times because even somebody like this might not actually be convinced, right? If you're not showing up in a way that makes them feel seen and like you're engaging with them, they might drop off as well. And so you want to make sure that you're consistent, kind of building that story over the months leading up to the event and giving them reasons to come. And kind of let them opt into it on their own terms, right? So these are just some examples. This was an email that you guys sent out, pulled in some organic or some LinkedIn posts here, and then some of these ads that someone might see when they visit the page and then leave without registering. So you guys obviously do a great job of, making sure the creative is cohesive across channels and that you're showing up, on organic and paid social. You're emailing people whose emails you have. And so, yeah, I think you guys obviously do an amazing job. I mean, ASAE Annual is a huge hit, and people know about it. You have that brand recognition. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about too, is like an event like ASAE Annual probably would sell out anyway because people know about it, right? But you don't want to be putting all of your eggs in one basket with email or putting too much pressure on one channel. And so that's a reason to have all of these digital campaigns in place to make sure that you're showing up in more ways than just one and not, relying solely on organic social or email alone, right?
Yeah, and I think overall, I think from a standpoint, some people maybe overlap into a couple of these buckets. And again, it, we appreciate all the categories. If you're a straggler, I love you
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
To the point of like at the end of the day, I mean, depending on what's going on in your world, you could be any three of these at any time in a year. So again, that's why it's important again with the funnel and just understanding where people are and having the data historically to use and kind of see what's working, what's not, and have that compare and contrast is so important. And to that point of just understanding, don't take it for granted that somebody's coming to an event just because they're a member or, for example, you have a kind of a baseline of what you expect from specific groups. Like these also allow you to kind of see, okay, are we trending well with young professionals? Like you want to have, you have like a percentage, we want to make sure we're sort of, we have the alignment of what we want to see there. It just, this all helps. And when you kind of are strategic about your target of like, okay, here's our executives. And again, it could be for a trade association, it could be a different dynamic. We're a professional association. So again, our members are associations. So that's not going to be the case with a lot of other organizations. Your members might be the electric utility power plants, or they might be the gas station, petroleum marketers and distributors. So it just, depending on your industry, it's all, these might be a little bit different too. But I guess the main point is putting them into what you think is going to be your typical journey for your attendees.
Yeah, and you can slice and dice this anyway. Obviously, these are just some examples, but a straggler could be a member, a non-member, a younger person, an older person. It could be an executive member, right? This could be a CEO who you're trying to get to join, and they aren't making the decision until the very end. A planner could also be a member, a non-member, whatever. And so these are just different ways of looking at decision-making sort of behaviors, but there's so many factors that go in, which again just points to how do you show up consistently across as many channels as possible at the frequency that makes sense for people based on how they're engaging with you. And this just requires a cross-channel marketing approach with ads, email, social, in some cases, direct mail. So whatever's working for you, just make sure that you're maximizing where you're showing up, but with relevancy, right? Um, Justice asked, what tool did you use to create those? I don't know, um, if you do you remember if your marketing team built these or if Feather built them for you?
We work with a media agency
Okay.
for all of our collateral and creative. So
Cool.
we work with a lot of partners, even though we're a large organization for an association, we still work with partners to make sure that we have the best in class
Yeah.
marketing materials.
Absolutely. Yeah, they always look good. Okay, so awareness doesn't have to start online, right? So we've talked a little bit about how to stay top of mind for people who've already showed intent, but when it comes to building awareness, there's a lot of things that you can do in Feather and outside of Feather to do this as well. So ASAE runs a lot of different awareness campaigns in Feather. One of them is geofencing. So this is a strategy for getting in front of people based on where they are in the real world. And so you can actually show up with ads on people's mobile devices based on where they've been. So you can geofence some common things for associations are to geofence your own past events. So if you hosted an event a couple of months ago and you want to get in front of those attendees with a promo for an upcoming event, or you want those people to maybe become members or something like that, you can serve ads to them because their mobile devices were inside of that perimeter, right? You can target industry conferences, so maybe other conferences or events that are happening in your industry, competitor events, employee or employers, right, in your industry, if you want to get in front of employees at those workplaces. College and high school campuses are another popular one if you're trying to get in front of young people who are making future, decisions about their future, whether to go to college or whether to go into the trades or something like that. So there's a lot of different use cases for using geofencing to get in front of specific groups of people based on where they spend time in the real world. So this is a really cool campaign type. And then this example is of how ASAE actually geofenced their own event. So MMC in Tech is an event that you guys host in May. And so a lot of those people who attended that event might be good candidates for this certification. And so people who attended that event, you wanted to then serve them ads to get certified, right? And so it was basically, yeah, people whose phones were physically in that room, they get tagged, and then you're showing up with ads to those people afterward, right? And so this was just a really cool example, I think, of sort of getting creative with, okay, who am I trying to reach? I'm trying to reach my own audience who's shown intent. How can I get in front of them outside of just the email inbox? Okay, well, they were just recently at my event. I actually want to serve those specific people ads for this thing that's very relevant to them having been at that event. So lots that you can do here to get in front of your own audience and net new people based on where they are. Okay, before people start to hop off, because I know we're coming to the top of the hour, I do want to talk about this because I think this is kind of a hot topic, how to actually get in front of young people and make sure that you're not becoming obsolete. I think that's a big concern for a lot of associations. Is the membership model dying, or is there still a lot of room to get into these younger audiences and get them to join? So I want to talk about this. I know you have a lot of great things to say about this, but really quickly, before people hop off, in case you have a hard stop, I want to run a quick poll. So if you like what you've seen today, if you're interested in seeing how you could run some of these campaigns yourself, go ahead and drop a yes, and we will connect you with somebody who can give you a personalized walkthrough of how you can use Feathr to do all of this and more. Um, so whether you are a trade association, a professional association, you're looking to promote an event, drive membership, you can do all of this as well. And so obviously ASAE is an outstanding organization. They do a really good job at running these campaigns and doing everything effectively. But, it's really about just having the right tools and being thoughtful about the strategy. And so you really can take a lot of what we've talked about today and apply it for your organization. So just drop a yes in there if you're interested, and I will connect you with somebody today. And then Nicole, yes, I will send out the recording and the slide deck after this. So that'll come to your email inbox. And I know there's some more questions, so we'll get to those, but I do want to talk about this because I think it is definitely something that people are curious about. So, you hear, okay, well, there's lots of free resources online, there's YouTube, there's LinkedIn, there's networking opportunities outside of associations. So what have you heard in the industry about this topic, and what do you have to say to associations that are wondering, am I still relevant? How can I stay in front of young people and really make my case?
Yeah, I would say also, I think the biggest point about just I guess just from a very high level standpoint, and this isn't just for associations, it's for every industry, is that it's important there's a lot of perception out there that everyone's doom scrolling through TikTok and nobody wants to interact with people. That's not the truth. Because again, I've been at like a few roundtables and panels and conversations about like in surveys with a large significant statistic amount of people being surveyed, and
Yeah.
they want that networking aspect. They want credentialing. Everyone's probably seen those articles like Gen Z is the new trade that
Yeah.
flowed into the trades. Again, I mean, to that point, there's a lot of opportunity there within a lot, especially our trade associations and even our professional associations in North America, to be able to capitalize on that messaging and find ways, if you are the gold standard for credentialing or ongoing education with your sessions, that you're finding ways to get to them. And going back to my TikTok example, retargeting. Like
Yeah.
you can retarget online and also through other platforms too. I'm not going to get into the details, that I'm not the expert on that, but there's some really creative ways to find out if you think your audience is in a certain place, more than just using your website data and traffic to get that type of attention. If you want your message out there to a younger audience who may not be answering direct mail, maybe that's the group that's not going to be responding back to your direct mail message. But again, they I just don't want that perception to be out there that, I mean, if you're using your planned tactics out there along with social media, testimonials, of course, your email, and making sure, because again, at ASAE, we have our next gen program, which we're very intentional about ensuring that there's leadership there for the next up and coming generation and scholarships there to make them, to allow them to go to attend events and maybe that they couldn't have without that funding. So it's
Yeah.
really important to us, and I know it's important to everybody on this webinar as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the trend of younger people, Gen Z, especially going into the trades, is definitely pronounced. Like I hear about that anecdotally all the time. So I know that that's definitely happening. And there's some things that you simply can't access without an association, right? I was just talking to my friend this weekend who's an engineer, and she was saying that she spent the weekend, doing some certifications online through an association for her job. And so it's definitely still, you have something to offer. And so you just have to kind of remind yourself, what is this? It's often what you've always offered, but you're just up against all of this other stuff, right? And the free resources and things like that. And just simply like an inundation of options and things. And so it's easy for people not to see you through the noise, but you really have to just kind of lean into, okay, what is the value that we have always offered that we continue to offer? We need to really sell that and we need to remind people of it, right? Ongoing.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is also just be very intentional about making them feel like the belonging there because again, there's conferences and again, even in my past, I've been to probably I was a consultant, worked with 100 associations at a time at one point in my career in terms of consulting, whether it be through event, advertising, sales, sponsorship, membership, retention. And
Yeah.
going through that, you go to the event, it's like, if I was a young professional, what am I getting out of it if I'm here? That's what,
Yeah.
just ask that question to yourself. Is there a sense of networking and belonging where they feel comfortable there? So it's, why aren't they coming? Well, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And think through like the perspective there and then try to incorporate that into your messaging, right? Why would somebody actually want to come? What are they looking to get out of that event or the membership or whatever? And how can I actually translate that into the promo for it? And so yeah, this is just kind of repeating what we've been saying, but make sure that you know your value prop by audience, make sure you have messaging for each segment. Give people the reason, really kind of lean into your value and repeat it because, again, there's more barriers than you think. So, repeating, don't underestimate how many times you need to repeat yourself in order to drive those conversions. Because it's not annoying. People will convert eventually if they, get enough nudges. And then same playbook for any conversion goal. So whether it's membership drive, course enrollment, you can apply this, right? You're growing awareness, staying in front of people because they show intent, and then driving those conversions through retargeting, through email automation, and all of that. And then last but not least, digital sponsorships and sponsored retargeting. So, like you mentioned earlier, this is something that you can offer to sponsors and exhibitors and partners. So, you obviously are tracking your website data. You have all of this access to that first party website data. This is a really warm audience of people who are coming to your website. So, you, the organization, have these people coming to your website and engaging, right? So, that's your what we call first party audience. And then your sponsors who normally want to be showing their ads at your events, on tablecloths, on a banner on your website, right? They want access to your audience. That's why they're doing all of that. So giving them access to that audience through sponsored retargeting is a really great way to add revenue for your own organization and give sponsors kind of a leveled up modern offering. And a lot of sponsors are already doing this. So I think the pitch isn't as hard as it used to be. I remember 5 years ago, 7 years ago, a lot of organizations saying, like, I don't really know how to sell this, how to explain it to sponsors. But I think even in the past few years, this has just become very normal for sponsors and exhibitors to do retargeting, right, with organizations. And so basically, you're just putting their ads in front of your audience on their behalf and giving them that direct access to your very warm audience. So ASAE does a great job of this. I know that you have lots of different sponsors that you offer this to. So if you want to talk really quickly about just what this looks like, included a few different ads for some of your sponsors. But yeah, how has this impacted just overall your experience with the Feathr platform and the revenue that's coming in from that?
Yeah, and again, I appreciate everyone who stayed on, and I know we're over time. I just
Yeah,
want to say
thank
real
you.
quickly about, again, this is just an example of We've had a lot of success in offering this a la carte as an advertising opportunity, as well as bundling it with existing sponsorships that may not have had a digital tracking tangible value when they say, what did we get our ROI out of? Let's just say someone has a logo on a table. We
Yeah.
bundled, let's just say 25,000 geo-fenced impressions around the event. So they're getting that on-site branding, but then also that branding to people around the event. Let's just say it's 5 square miles around a convention center. So in fact, it's actually helped protect revenue from a sponsorship standpoint and just factoring in, you just would have to on your end look at how that in terms of the margin on your end from a sponsorship standpoint to kind of bundle that in and whether it be just keep the same price and bundle it in as an added kind of surprise and delight, or just put it to market as a la carte. But it's the same principle. Someone comes to your website, comes to your event site. The advertising's already been purchased. The ads are set up on the back end already based on the specs provided, and they come to your site. XYZ company leaves, let's just say they need a filtration system or a pump or a meter. They leave their website, and then all of a sudden, their Mueller ads are everywhere in terms of trying to find, or again, you're working any type of association and your suppliers, those members who would be the buyers of those products or services are going to be getting those ads the same way that someone as an attendee. So it's same in sort of tactic, but from a strategic standpoint, it's just your suppliers. And if they're not that money that they're investing with you, what they're doing is they're going somewhere else using that money because they're doing these types of campaigns, whether it be through Google, which is not the one thing that's different is this is first party data. So they're actually getting that very core audience that they can't get anywhere else. And if you're not offering that, again, that's what was mentioned earlier about not about basically protecting your revenue and that missed opportunity there because they're going somewhere else to spend that money because everyone's
Yeah.
doing
They're
some
willing to spend
aspect of
it.
that.
Exactly. They're willing to spend the money. So can you be, the organization that's actually getting that money from them? It's not really a hard sell because they understand the value of getting in front of really warm audiences that are relevant for them. They're already doing it through their other sponsorship opportunities with you. So offering this is just kind of an additional value. Um, Okay, cool. And then this is just a slide on, making the case. We talked a little bit about this, Mike and I, when we met earlier about just what are some of the things that you can say to your board or your executive leadership if there's pushback. So because we're over time, I'll let everyone just sort of read this on your own. But, how can you kind of frame the problem, frame the missed opportunity, and present that when you're making the case for tools like this? So, yeah, thank you so much, everyone who stayed 7 minutes over. Really appreciate it. There's a couple questions I wanted to answer just because if people are still on, I wanted to answer a couple of these. So, someone asked, are most ASAE members individuals who work for associations or the associations themselves largely the members?
Yeah, so it is mixed. Like for example, we have some associations where they'll have 20 of their members of their team that are members. So from an organizational standpoint, yes. And then more on our supplier side is where you have more of the individual side. Let's just say you're an AMS company or you're a DMO destination. That's more on the industry level, on the individual level. Whereas on our professional association members, there's associations can sign up as an organizational member.
Cool. Yeah, and it just kind of makes sense that, your sponsors are going to be things like this, right? Discover Toronto, come to New Orleans. So it's like your members are often associations that are hosting their own events. And so your sponsors are going to be people who want your members to come to their city to host their event, right? So just kind of thinking about who your sponsors are, why they'd want to get in front of your audience. And it makes sense. So that's going to differ from association to association, but a lot of your sponsors seem to be like locations, right? Like tourism, probably chambers of commerce, groups that are trying to get in front of people who are looking for a destination to host an event. So, okay. And then Jim, thanks for your kind words. Glad to hear that you have been a client for 5 years with Feathr. Question is, do you start your digital campaigns around the same time with your email and social? That's a great question. So how does that kind of line up timeline wise?
Yeah, so there'll be some preliminary emails that go out first, sort of some recap emails and some getting ahead emails, but it doesn't follow too much further after that. I would say there's just again a couple of touch points, whether it be social. and this is all organic, coming just straight directly from us. But for the most part, these campaigns are running, since we do a lot of early bird, are going to be running kind of in tandem.
Awesome. Um, okay, cool. And then I think Um, already using Feather, trying to understand how to better use the platform. Would appreciate a link to the recording. Yes, absolutely. We will be sending the recording and the slide deck out. So I will do my best to get that to everybody today, actually. So be on the lookout for that in your inbox. I think we can go ahead and call it. I think there might be a couple questions we didn't get to, but I think we got to most of them. So thank you everyone so much for your engagement in the chat and the amazing questions. And thank you so much, Mike. This was really helpful. You have so much insight on this, and so I really appreciate you taking the time to share that with everyone.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate everyone who came on. And if you're not here and you're going to watch this recording later on, thanks so much for your interest. And again, we're all doing, again, every association organization, we're all working on something, and we're all doing these little touch points, and just trying to find it and putting it all together is always the goal. And there's only so much time in the day, so sometimes you just need a little help in terms of maybe some technology and tools. And for us, it's been a great way to kind of marry everything together. So appreciate the opportunity, and it's been a great discussion.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right,
Bye.
thanks all.